BSN's Motoring 95 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life. And Midas, the way it should be.
When you have an automobile program like Motoring 95 that includes people like Graham Fletcher, Bill Gardiner, and Jim Kenzie, you're bound to hear plenty of opinions. And while we don't always agree with them, hey, that's what makes the world go round. But this week, we're going to do something we have never done on Motoring. We've accepted an invitation by a manufacturer to reevaluate a product and hopefully change a first opinion. Now, the manufacturer is Michelin, and the product is the MX V4 tire.
The tyres on our tester were Michelin's 195/65 MX V4s that feature a compound specifically designed for the Cirrus. While these tyres deliver good grip in the dry, they are skittish in the wet. Suffice it to say, I would change the tyres. Well, when I did the Cirrus out in Cape Breton, we were blessed with wonderful weather, and what I judged a lot of my comments on the MX V4 was based upon an experience the previous winter driving another car with the same tyre on, and quite frankly, it was dreadful.
The Chrysler Cirrus introduction, the suspension engineer was very proud of the fact that they were going to use MX V4 tires, and myself and a couple of my colleagues all went, because we'd driven MX V4 tires on a Honda Accord not too many months previously in snow and slush and ice, and the car was really very unstable.
Following their comments, Michelin invited us out here to the Keweenaw Research Center in Houghton, Michigan. And we are here to have Graham and Jim evaluate that original tire and the new Michelin Green X tire. The research center is owned by Michigan Tech University. It's here that Michelin research engineers test over 2,000 tires over the course of the winter. Joining Graham and Jim is Denny Duquette, who writes for the Montreal Daily La Presse and who also gave a bad review to the Michelin tire. 4 Corsicas have been fitted with an assortment of Michelin summer, winter, and all-season tires, including the new MX V4 tire with the so-called green technology.
Well, people's opinion do count for us, and especially in the tire business, where most of the consumers are really not expert in tires. They have a tendency to believe what the journalist says, and when a journalist tells us that he's asking himself questions about tires, we do care, we do listen, and we do want the tires to prove what they have to prove.
We have about 1.5 miles road that goes into the woods with a dog leg in it, and we call that the access road. And when we run down the access road, we stop frequently and take analytical data. We do a start from 0 and run to 20 miles an hour. And we have a very sensitive but simple analytical machine. It's basically an accelerometer. It takes times and gives you a reading in G's. My capacity with Michelin is as a subjective test driver or evaluator. We come up here in the wintertime and we do our winter test program, and we do some what we call objective evaluation, but primarily we test about 500 sets of tires subjectively on a variety of vehicles. The majority of it is internal testing for the Michelin system. Probably the majority of tires that we test will never see the street. They're all prototype testing. And we also test those against known references, tires that we are producing now. And it's for development and for OE customers and for aftermarket sales. But we also keep an eye on the industry, and we test competitors to see where they are and where we are and where everybody is in relationship to each other.
The tire is the only part of your car that actually touches the road. So you can have the best engine, the best suspension, the best brakes in the world. If the tires aren't communicating what that car can do to the pavement, none of the rest of it matters. And we certainly are going to find out here today, I hope, the differences in how tires behave in bad weather. And that's the reality of life in Canada. I'm always prepared to change my opinion, contrary to what some people believe. I do have an open mind, and we'll find out what's good and what's bad.
So a bit of pressure on here to prove them wrong? Is that what it's all about?
not to prove them wrong. You can test so many tires in so many different situations, and by comparing exactly same cars with those different tires, we felt that it could give an opportunity to maybe change their mind about the tires.
Will my opinion change on this tyre? Well, time will tell. At the end of today, I think I'll have a firm handle on whether or not they've actually solved the problems that I perceived with the MX-V4.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we're in Southern California to put Honda's latest through its paces. This is the all-new Odyssey, a vehicle destined for the highly competitive minivan market. The question that needs to be answered, though, is this a minivan or is it in fact a large wagon? Beneath the hood is a reworked version of the 2.2-litre four-cylinder engine found in the base Accord. The rework has upped the horsepower to 140 and the torque up to 145 pounds-feet. A greater emphasis has been placed on low and mid-range performance. As such, the throttle response is, for the most part, respectable. I say respectable because if you use the Odyssey's full payload capacity, performance becomes decidedly leisurely. For the record, the 0 to 100k times run at about 12.5 seconds when empty. I, for one, hope that the recently introduced 2.7-litre V6 will find its way from the Accord and into the Odyssey. If and when this happens, the single biggest drawback with the Odyssey will be eliminated. Matched with the engine is a 4-speed automatic transmission that features a lock-up converter and something called grade logic control. The latter uses fuzzy logic to control unwanted gear shifts when going up or downhill. The advantage being that when going downhill you benefit from engine braking, and when going uphill the transmission stays in one gear and does not hunt between several. In either case, the logic employed improves the driving characteristics immensely. The other big advantage is that the kickdown is prompt, meaning that when the driver needs passing power, it is delivered relatively quickly. Unlike most of the competition, the Odyssey is based upon a passenger car, Honda's highly successful Accord. The four-wheel, fully independent double wishbone suspension has been adopted to provide proper wheel placement and stability in corners. You also get anti-roll bars at both ends. Well, that's the theory. Does it work in practice? The answer is very effectively so. The double wishbone suspension combined with the roll bars give this vehicle a very capable and confident feel, and yet when it comes to ride comfort, this vehicle is quite simply second to none in its class. The other item that helps the Odyssey is its low centre of gravity, which gives the vehicle a low roll centre, which in turn inspires driver confidence. Aiding the overall feel is a progressive power-assisted rack and pinion setup that offers better than average on-centre feel. Stopping power is provided by a four-wheel disc brake system that comes complete with a 4-sensor 3-channel anti-lock system. During the test I required just 121 feet to stop from 80k. My lone gripe being that the ABS is far too willing to intervene. In short, the algorithm needs a rethink. From the driver's perspective, the Odyssey has been very well laid out. You get lots of standard stuff: power windows, mirrors, locks, cruise control mounted right on the steering wheel. All the secondary controls are very easily accessed and reached, right down to the radio, despite the fact that it sits below the heater controls. The only oddity with the Odyssey is the fact that the front passenger seat is the only chair in the van that doesn't get an armrest. However, a little bird did whisper to me that we might see one next year. One of the really neat features on the Odyssey is the treatment of the rear seat. To fold it down, remove the headrests and store them in their little cubby hole. Once, twice, the seat's now out of the way, nice flat floor, and you don't have to worry about storing a heavy back seat. The only other comment here is that when the back seat is up, a family of 6 taking a vacation will have to invest in the optional roof rack if they're going to get all their belongings on board. Another big plus is that the low-level entry allows easy access to all seats, especially when you factor in the 4th door on the left side. For me, the extra door is a godsend because the driver no longer has to walk all the way around the vehicle to get something out of the back seat. Elsewhere, you'll find no fewer than 6 cup holders and plenty of storage compartments right down to the 2 dash-mounted glove boxes. From the driver's seat, the analog dash is easily read, the controls easily reached and operated, and thanks to a full 293 degrees of all-round visibility, you have a commanding view. The latter helps with forward visibility and when trying to back the Odyssey into a confined space. Unlike minivans of old, the new Odyssey comes with a full slate of safety features including dual airbags, ABS, adjustable upper seatbelt anchors, child-proof rear door locks, and headrests in all outboard positions. This vehicle also meets the incoming 1997 side impact regulations. That's it from Lake Elsinore and the adventure with the Odyssey in Southern California. If you look at this vehicle as a minivan, it comes up shy in a couple of ways. First of all, it doesn't have enough trunk space, and second of all, it could do with a few more horses under the hood. However, if you look at this vehicle as a very practical and versatile station wagon, it fits the bill and fits the bill very nicely.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns hood safety catches. Whether your car has an inside release like this one, or if it's an older car with an external release, there's always a second move required to fully open that hood, and that's depressing the hood safety catch. Don't overlook this important safety item on your car. On this 10-year-old car, the hood safety is seized at its pivot point back here. There's a little spring that should have snapped it back to that position the minute I took my fingers off it. Because it didn't, if someone hadn't fully closed this hood, it could fly right open in the driver's face, blinding him. Believe me, I've had it happen to me, and it's your worst automotive experience. Your only saving grace is that little gap at the back of the hood. You can get your head down behind the steering wheel and peer through that gap enough to get the car safely to the side of the road. It's the end of your windshield and the end of your hood, but that's the least of your worries. Getting that car stopped safely is important. If you ever see this defect existing on your car, make sure that you take some penetrating fluid to that pivot point and free it up immediately. Don't overlook this important safety item. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Michelin Canada is not the only party concerned about Motoring 95's negative evaluation of the new MX V4 tire. The new Cirrus comes equipped with these tires, and Chrysler was eager to see Jim and Graham give the tire a second look.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, if the consumer, comes to us, we take any of those, either concerns or complaints very seriously. But there's no question about it. If we had a tire with a major design flaw, obviously you're going to get with them. It's of as much concern to our tire suppliers as it is to us as the automotive manufacturer. I mean, you're talking, hundreds of thousands, millions of units. I mean, for a given unit, you're talking times 4, obviously, for the tires. There are a number of tire makers in our own case, for example, Goodyear and Michelin, that we deal with a lot, and they're again a major supplier to us. Just like any automotive parts manufacturer, we bring them on board at a very early stage, and then they work side by side, as I said, with our engineers, with our designers, to come up with the proper tire, to give them the precise handling characteristics that particular sedan or sports car needs.
We're back here at the Keweenaw Research Center in Houghton, Michigan. And as you can see, Jim Kenzie, Graham Fletcher, and Denis Duquette are still test driving those new Michelin Green X tires, and we'll have their verdict at the end of the program, so stick around. But first, let's warm things up a bit and join Bill Gardiner at the Motoring 95 garage.
Over the past few years, you've probably caught the odd glimpse of my old Ford pickup truck on the program. Now, as shabby as that thing looks, it's still running. It was a gift from a friend about 7 years ago, and I can't believe it's still going. But it's shabby enough now on the outside that I've got to get rid of it. And a deal came along on this 88 GMC that I just couldn't resist. Now, it's 7 years old, and it was the first of this body style, and it's not without its problems. So we're going to highlight a few of the problems I've got with this pickup truck over the next few weeks on the program and show you how to rectify some of the situations I've got with this truck. My first problem is oil consumption. When I start the engine in the morning, I get a big cloud of blue smoke out the tailpipes. It's annoying and in my case embarrassing. It's something I want to deal with. I've got worn valve stem seals. Going to show you how to fix that. Another major concern with this truck is a seized lower ball joint. Now all that creaking and groaning that you hear when I bounce the front suspension is an indication that one of my ball joints is seized up. Now in the first couple of model years of these trucks there were no grease fittings in the ball joints. They've since rectified that problem, but in the case of this truck, that little bit of grease that was in the ball joints from the factory is now completely gone and the ball joints started to seize up. It's something we need to address immediately because it's not only a safety issue, it's very annoying as well. So we're going to replace the ball joints with greasable ones. Another thing, starting with the 88 model year, GM extensively used galvanized steel in the outer body panels. Everything with the exception of this roof panel is galvanized on both sides. And significantly, that's the only panel on this entire truck that shows any rust or corrosion. You can see that the leading edge of that roof panel has a bit of rust as a result of the stone chips. Now there's chips and scratches over the body of this entire vehicle, but that's the only place it's rusted. Since we're on the topic of pickup trucks, there's one thing I just can't resist saying, and that's this trend for everybody today to put plastic box liners in their truck. Unless you're hauling a corrosive substance like salt or, for example, swimming pool chemicals, don't waste your money on that plastic garbage. It'll crack, it'll trap moisture between the box liner and the bed and probably accelerate the corrosion on your truck. This box is being beat up pretty severely by 7 years of industrial use, and it's still in good shape, it works fine, and those dents add character. In any case, I think they're a joke, and don't waste your money on them unless you absolutely need them. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardiner for Motoring 95.
Off-Road Corner with Cam McRae. Brought to you by Land Rover, makers of Range Rover, Discovery, and Defender.
So you bought yourself a sport utility, a 4x4, with big tires, super strong suspension, a powerful torque-laden engine, and underbody protection. It's ready to go off-road. But you're not. It's time to go back to school. One of the few schools in North America is the 4x4 Experience, run by Andy Philpott. Andy's a high school chemistry teacher, but his first love is off-roading, and now he's sharing that love with others.
What I'm trying to teach is that off-road driving can be safe to the participants, drivers and passengers, non-damaging to the vehicle, and can be environmentally sensible. Anything we do in the environment is going to leave a mark behind, but hopefully using proper off-road technique, all we will leave behind is maybe some tire marks in wet mud and some bent grass, but we won't leave any other marks behind. Most people, unfortunately, just think of it as a slightly bumpier version of on-road driving and drive in that manner. And in those cases, that's where you get the vehicle damage. You spend your time getting stuck. It is a course that is designed for beginners. It is not a demanding course in terms of driving all vehicles, but it is a very good introduction to or for people who have never driven off the road before. One of the important things, as far as I'm concerned, is that people do bring their own vehicles. These are the vehicles they're going to drive on-road, they're going to drive them off-road. This is the vehicle that they should be familiar with. We have all sorts of vehicles. We've had GM Trackers, we've had Range Rovers, we've had Suzukis, Jimmys, you name it, anything with four-wheel drive. I mean, why people buy 4x4 vehicles, sports utility vehicles, which is the largest and fastest growing sector of the domestic market, I really don't know why people are buying them. Partly it is image, partly it is a factor of safety because they are larger vehicles, partly it is, well, in the snow, I'll be better off. The answer is, in snow, if you don't know what you're doing in a four-wheel drive vehicle, you're no better off than you were before. In fact, you may be worse off because it's a heavier vehicle and you'll hit things harder. Best piece of advice is to be gentle. I like to think of off-road driving as the gentle art. It's much more peaceful than the 401. It's very relaxing, and the problem is that most people, when in doubt,
use too much welly. In fact, in most situations, you want to take your foot off rather than put your foot down. And that's something it's very hard to learn.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
How do you like my new glasses? Bifocals and everything. Inevitable sign of aging, I suppose, but still, getting older beats the only available alternative. You know, the new glasses got me thinking about driving and vision. The most common comment you see on car crash reports is, "I didn't see the other car." Well, if you didn't see the other car, either you weren't looking in the right place, and we've talked about that before, or you couldn't see the other car because your eyesight is so lousy. A British traffic cop took it upon himself to investigate driver vision, and 20% of the 2,000 drivers he tested couldn't pass the current vision test required to get a license in England. Knowing how much my eyesight's changed in 20 years, I'll bet the same holds true in Canada. A lot of drivers get their licenses when they're teenagers before they need glasses. And since they don't get tested again until they're 80, chances are an awful lot of drivers are out there whose license doesn't contain that dreaded must-wear corrective lenses condition. The guy doing the sound on today's shoot is in that circumstance. Should be ashamed of yourself. Get glasses. Now, we know that 35% of car crash deaths are caused by drunk drivers. That means 65% of them are caused by sober drivers. Maybe they're sober, they're just blind. Maybe it's time for provincial governments to look into regular retesting of drivers. If not to prove they can actually drive, then at least to prove they can see. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, Graham, Jim, and Denis have completed their testing of the Michelin MX V4 tire, a tire they weren't too pleased with in earlier reviews. Let's find out if they have a change of heart.
Well, we were nervous about the old MX V4 tire coming here. We've driven the new MX V4 tire, and it's certainly a whole lot better than the old one was. It's interesting to see the old MXV tire against the summer tire, and it's head and shoulders better than it. So it comes down to a matter of horses for courses. You have to have a tire that's designed to do the sort of job that you need doing. But the new green technology that Michelin is touting clearly has made this superior tire to the one that we were concerned about when we first came here.
Why it was so bad? I mean, it's a pretty good four-season tire, and the thing that surprised me during this testing, they had those Alpine winter tires, and they were almost maybe as good or as bad, but the MX V4 was pretty close in the snow condition we drove, so it makes you wonder why bother to buy these winter tires when the MX V4 I mean, it's pretty good on that kind of surface we had today, like hard snow and ice.
Well, after driving around this course today, and it's a pretty challenging course, the tyres are much better than I remember them being. The new Green X tyres with the silica added to the compound certainly makes a difference. The only thing I'd really like to have seen today is that I don't think it was cold enough. I mean, when I remember the really bad experiences, it was very, very cold. Today it's been, in and around freezing, so it hasn't been that cold. I'd really like to see a similar test conducted at about minus 18 centigrade, then we find out the true verdict. But right now, I think they've done a heck of a job.
So there you have it. We're going to end the program with some advice about purchasing a car. Don't forget to look at the tires and make sure the dealer knows something about tires before you purchase them. That's it for now. We'll see you next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
TSN's Motoring 95 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life. And Midas, the way it should be.